If you played the original Doom when it first came out, it was probably on a computer like this. Today you can play it on a refrigerator, thermostat, or even on a pregnancy test. Anytime somebody gets their hands on a unique electronic, the internet asks, okay, but can it run Doom?
Can it run Doom?
Oh, you could probably play Doom on that.
How many potatoes does it take to run Doom?
I'm playing Doom on a calculator.
Can it run Doom?
Despite being over 30 years old, this beloved shooter is still being ported to just about any electronic with a screen. For programmers, it signifies the capabilities of even the most humble device.
It will run on pretty much everything, and if you can't get it to run on something, maybe you don't want to use that thing.
This is Next Level, a show about gaming, technology, and why you can play Doom on a billboard. The fact that Doom is being played on, say, a toaster says a lot about the hacker ethos that made it, and how that ethos is still changing technology and gaming culture to this day. If you're not familiar with Doom, it's probably hard to see what all the fuss is about. But when the game released in 1993, it made id Software developers John Romero and John Carmack overnight rock stars. Doom was the most technologically and visually advanced game you could play on your home computer.
Oh, right in the face.
They were really mind-blowing at the time because it's just like there was nothing like it. It was super addictive.
That's David Kushner, the journalist who literally wrote the book on Doom.
I remember staying up late in the offices and you're just screaming and shooting each other on the computer. It was very novel, and I think that's why it just riveted so many people.
The gameplay was blazingly fast and smooth, but it was really the graphics that blew people away. Carmack's super advanced texturing and lighting techniques made Doom's demonic setting more enticing than the gray voids of id's previous shooter, Wolfenstein 3D. The game had complex level design with innovations like ramps, windows, secret doors.
Watch this. See them all down in here? Wow. You see them. That's unbelievable.
3D computer games at the time were pretty much shoeboxes, but Doom was this whole world for you to explore. Doom was also the first shooter with online multiplayer, enabled by the burgeoning internet. In a press release, id boasted that they fully expected to be the #1 cause of decreased productivity in businesses around the world. They were definitely right. The game was the rare phenomenon that was so massive, it crossed over into mainstream pop culture. Everybody played Doom. Here's id Software superfan Trent Reznor with Carmack and some third random fan at E3. It even got name-checked on shows like ER.
Die, bastard. Die! Come on!
Stargate SG-1.
You played Doom.
The Simpsons.
You have defeated the Doom bot and sealed the portal.
And even Friends.
You guys want to play Doom? Or we can keep doing this.
Doom was so popular, it's considered the inspiration for most shooters that came after it, like Halo Combat Evolved and Half-Life, arguably up to Fortnite. It was so essential that for a while, first-person shooters were just called Doom clones. But none of that is why, 30 years later, people are still obsessed with porting Doom to, say, a cash register. id Software was innovative not just in the games that they made, but how they made them, and the way that they ran their business. To get a better sense of these innovations, I asked an expert in id Software strategies.
My name is John Romero, and I co-created Doom.
When Johns, Romero, and Carmack were first starting to develop video games, it was a lot harder for players to mod games with custom images and sounds. But it wasn't unheard of. In fact, modding was already starting to shape the games industry. The games that Romero grew up playing were laying that groundwork.
So if you remember the classic Colossal Cave Adventure, that game that was like the beginning of the adventure game genre, the one that everybody played was a mod. There was an original program written by Will Crowther, which was, the caver code to go simulate the caves that he liked caving in. And then later, Don Woods modified it and turned it into a game. You know, it already had the structure of all the locations and places to go, and he just like put treasure and made a score system and, you know, monsters and stuff, and he turned it into a game, and then it became a genre.
When Wolfenstein 3D got its own cosmetic makeover, courtesy of fans, some id devs were worried about copyright issues and piracy. What was stopping a hacker from making their own version of Doom and stealing their market share? The studio could have cracked down on this behavior, but instead, they made Doom even easier to mod. They changed the file structure, how the game itself was coded and organized, so that modders could easily replace the media files of the game. In Wolfenstein, when modders added their wacky variations, the original game was permanently altered. For Doom, Carmack created a separate media file type called WADs, so modders could easily redirect the code to point towards their specific Barney JPEGs. Even more incredibly, it also licensed their game engines to other studios. Historian Tristan Donovan writes that even saying you should let your rivals use your technology was viewed as heresy. And remember, id Software had the most advanced PC gameplay and graphics on the market. They were the company everybody was racing to catch up with. And they said, here, take this, build on what we have made.
One of the reasons why I started working with Raven Software and these other companies to make more games using our code, because I want to play more games. You know, I don't want to be the only one with this engine, with this really fun kind of gameplay. I want other people to do that. So like licensing it out and getting people to start doing that was awesome.
Today, using shared assets is very common. Studios can pull from a whole industry of game engines like Unity, middleware like SpeedTree, and vast marketplaces of 3D assets and textures. And that's partially because studios like id Software innovated this business model.
So our willingness to put that out there is kind of indicative of what would follow later, which is the actual release of it for free.
That's right. In 1997, just a few years after Doom was released, id Software gave away the source code for free. It is hard to describe how radical that was, and still is. This isn't just opening the door for piracy, it was inviting the pirates in and loading up their pockets with the silver. Consider how aggressively a company like Nintendo defends their IP. They fought anything that might potentially, in some way, negatively impact profits, like video game rentals. And still today, they're very active in sending out takedown notices and suing fans or developers that they perceive as overstepping. But id Software didn't see that behavior as infringement or piracy. In fact, one of the earliest iterations of the "Can it run Doom" meme was a company porting the game to Super Nintendo without id's knowledge.
1994, we basically got a prototype cartridge in the mail, and we're like, what is it? This is crazy. Let's put it in the Super Nintendo. And we ran it, and it was basically Doom running on a Super Nintendo, and we had nothing to do with that company. We never asked them to do anything, you know, like port it or anything like that. So they just did it on their own, and we're like, okay, let's publish this thing.
A port like this was an all-around win. id Software didn't have to do the work, Williams Entertainment got a cut of the profits, and now people could play Doom on a whole new platform. Predictably, freeing the source code really ramped up this porting behavior. Kind of like how giving a toddler a hammer can really ramp up home renovations. Hackers were putting Doom in places it was never meant to go, like a digital equivalent of graffiti.
One of the first Doom running on a printer examples was, I think, at a security conference where someone basically proved that they could just over Wi-Fi hack into someone's printer and brick it, and they basically bricked it by making it so it could only run Doom.
That's the version of hack you're probably more used to hearing these days, testing out the security of a digital object. But in the 90s, hacker didn't yet mean a nefarious agent who was trying to rip and tear your bank account. The hacker ethos represented a desire to experiment and to play with technology.
John and I basically come from, you know, programming in the 80s, where information was really hard to come by, but if you had it, you would share it with other people because not everybody had those books. And that was very much the hacker ethic of the 60s and 70s, where people would just share as much as they could. John and I both had that same like share everything that you know, because there's no reason not to. It's not like if I tell you how to write the Doom engine, it doesn't mean that you're going to make a game like my game, because everybody's creative expression is totally different. It's personal. So giving you the tools to make your own creative expression is great, right? Like, why not empower everybody?
They shared their technology to enable other creators to make their own games. And the companies that they licensed their engines to made games that were way different from Doom.
I'm kind of a talent broker for the rebels. A guy who is as good as you can make a lot of gold.
Suppress your instinct to lead. Pursue, rabbit.
Romero and Carmack weren't investing in the gaming community because they thought it would be profitable, although it certainly was for them. They were investing because they loved gaming. They weren't venture capitalists, they were adventure capitalists.
How would you like to earn more gold and a future free from tyranny?
Kushner describes this as an ideological move, a leftist gesture that empowered the people and in turn loosened the grip of corporations.
That managed to vest a whole generation of aspiring game makers, coders, and, you know, as John Carmack, the co-creator of Doom, said to me, that like having a Doom mod became kind of a default resume in the gaming industry. So now that it's been 30 years or so, they really have inspired a whole generation.
I like the new monsters. And the new sound.
The hacker ethos is still alive and well in the gaming community, and you can see it in the proliferation of modding, of indie studios, of tutorials on how to create. And you can especially see it in the "Can it run Doom" meme.
The first ones were devices that, you know, had relatively powerful hardware that could run Doom, and then just as the years go on, that power that's required is getting cheaper and cheaper and smaller. So basically Doom runs in a printer, you know, like it runs on the pregnancy test, you know.
I went out and got a couple electronic pregnancy tests and took one apart and found out that the chip in it was more powerful than the first computer I had as a kid, the one I used to play Doom. And I was like, wow, that's amazing, that we can just sort of throw away. I mean, this is a literal disposable product. But, you know, it's that powerful.
Foon is a programmer and an expert on reverse engineering and old hardware, and she's got it to run Doom many times.
Like at my last job, one of the very first things I did there was get Doom running on their power tools.
Foon was inspired to port Doom to a pregnancy test after seeing a disassembled electronic COVID test. It turned out to be basically the same as the paper versions, but with a digital display that reads the outputs.
Someone in like the comments of that mentioned that pregnancy tests, the electronic ones, are basically the same. So I thought that was interesting. And obviously a lot of people, so when I mentioned it's that powerful, were like, whoa, can it run Doom?
The pregnancy test had an OTP, not that kind of OTP, a one-time programmable chip. It couldn't be reprogrammed to, say, play Doom. And the similarly basic screen could only say pregnant, not pregnant, and check manual, because what else would it need to say? But Foon had a similar screen and chip, which they cobbled together to make a rough facsimile of what it would look like to play Doom on a pregnancy test. And they did eventually make a playable version using a Bluetooth keyboard. Although tiny and in monochrome, for fans of Doom, it's instantly recognizable. Over the last 30 years, hackers have made a huge body of shared information, documentation, forums, videos, for anyone who might want to port Doom to, say, a calculator powered by potatoes.
I could keep playing this pretty much indefinitely until I suffocate.
But it's not a matter of just getting it to run on any old computer. It's about getting it to run on the weirdest, wackiest, most unusual item you can.
That little, oops, it's disappearing, but it's like a little terminal. It's got just a little display, just a little plastic keyboard. It's a computer in a weird shape. It's got a small screen, kind of a crappy keyboard, but it's just a computer. Getting it to run Doom is not that hard. So the real badge of honor is getting it to run on things that are weird and not ever remotely designed to run Doom.
And these days, There is a lot of weird devices that can play Doom. Screens are essentially an invasive species in our home. We didn't used to have or need cash registers, tractors, pregnancy tests, Lego bricks, electronic toothbrushes, MacBook touch bars with screens, inputs, and the ability to network with the internet. According to a white paper by Cisco Systems, in 2003, there were slightly more people on the planet than there were devices connected to the internet. By 2010, the number of connected devices was almost twice the number of humans, and we called it the Internet of Things. There was a lot of concern about the Internet of Things in the 2010s when people began asking reasonable questions like, why is my refrigerator running a protection racket in Minecraft? That's not a joke. That's a real example.
3 young men are credited with creating and operating a massive botnet scheme that made its way to Alaska. Hundreds of thousands of devices taken over by one small ring of hackers.
In 2016, the internet suffered the largest cyber terrorism attack ever seen. So powerful that Wired reporter Garrett Graff described it as the first thermonuclear bomb of the DDoS world. The hackers that created the Mirai botnet weren't trying to bring down the internet or cripple the infrastructure of nations. They made it to scam money in Minecraft. And they made it by infecting unsecure electronics on the Internet of Things.
It was huge. The ability that it had to simultaneously recruit hundreds of thousands of improperly secured Internet of Things devices made it something no one had ever really seen before.
So it seems silly to cram an insecure computer chip into a water bottle and expect incredible things to happen. But on the other hand, a dumb appliance like a telephone became smart and revolutionized the world. Who's to say that a smart light bulb couldn't do the same? Well, it was just an idea. I came into this video being kind of down on the heaps of cheap disposable devices cluttering our countertops and landfills. I was all ready to make a snarky comment about peeing on a computer that is more powerful than the one that sent us to the moon. And yes, what I just said is true. But then Foon pointed out something very thoughtful.
Naomi Wu, who's a really cool Chinese hacker, pointed out that no, having the computers in them really helps. But putting the computer inside, it means you have a consistent lighting environment. You don't have any errors in reading it. And it's like, to someone who's like scared in a bathroom at work, that makes a huge difference. So really it's not wasteful, it's more like it's adding extra, certainty and security, where you're like, I'm gonna let the computer, which is all pre-programmed and knows exactly how to do it, read it for me, rather than have to worry about like, oh, is that line dark enough? That kind of thing. It removes all the uncertainty.
For better or for worse, objects that never needed screens now have screens. They have network connections, they have input options, they have everything you might need to play a video game. So why not play Doom? And every time someone pushes the boundary of what devices can run Doom, it inspires somebody else to push a little further as well. Like the YouTuber Adef, who got frames of Doom to play out on the Pokemon Spinda.
Please enjoy.
They were like inspired by seeing my pregnancy test one. So they were like, if we can do it on a pregnancy test, what else can we do it on? And then they saw the Pokemon and went on that one.
Doom had an incredible head start by giving fans the tools they would need to participate. And as time went on, more people participated, so the more visible it was, and the more outlandish the expressions of it became.
It was a game that, basically everyone knew, and it was open source so everyone could play with it. So it kind of got started a lot of projects, and then it kind of turned into just sort of a follow the leader thing, where it's like, other people have done this, and people know it's a meme. So whenever you talk about some kind of weird hardware, one of the things people want to ask is, can it run Doom?
Over 30 years after its release, the popularity of Doom is still shaping modern games. The hacker ethos to explore and create is why people play with game creation platform Roblox and make fully functioning computers in Minecraft. It's what drives people to become game developers in the first place. The instinct that created id Software is still fundamental to how games are made, shared, and will continue to evolve. Id didn't create that ethos, but they were more than willing to share it with the rest of the community.
The more games that embrace that, the openness and the modability, you have a really huge audience and your game can live for a really long time if it's a good one.
People port Doom because it's still so popular, and it's still so popular because people keep porting it. And in 100 years, when gamers are bragging about getting hollow chips embedded in their cyber brains, people will still be asking, sure, but can it run Doom?